Now we start with Middle East. French President Emmanuel Macron has stated that France will help the Palestinian Authority to draft a constitution for a future Palestinian state. Macron has added that France will contribute 100 million euros in humanitarian aid to Gaza for 2025. A number of major Western nations, including France, have formally recognized the Palestinian state in September, a move driven by frustration with Israel over its devastating war in Gaza and to promote a two-state solution to the conflict. Let's listen into what the French president has said.
Oui, Monsieur le Président, comptez sur la France pour continuer d'avancer dans la voie tracée ensemble, pour continuer d'avancer sur la base des 20 points proposés par les États-Unis d'Amérique et ouvrant la porte à la paix et la constitution d'un État palestinien. C'est à cette fin que nous avons pris aujourd'hui ensemble la décision de mettre en place un comité conjoint pour la consolidation de l'État de Palestine. Ce comité sera chargé de travailler sur tous les aspects juridiques, constitutionnels, institutionnels et organisationnels. Il contribuera au travail d'élaboration d'une nouvelle constitution dont le président Abbas m'a présenté un projet et visera à parachever l'ensemble des conditions d'un tel état de...
Meanwhile, Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas has reaffirmed his condemnation of the killing and kidnappings of civilians on both sides. Abbas has also reaffirmed his commitment to carrying out reforms within the Palestinian Authority, including holding elections. Let's listen in.
نجدد التأكيد على رفضنا وإدانتنا لقتل وخطف المدنيين بما في ذلك ما قامت به حماس في 7 أكتوبر. ومن ناحية أخرى نرفض معاداة السامية لأنها ضد سياستنا وقيمنا، ونتمسك بثقافة الحوار والسلام، وإننا نريد دولة ديمقراطية غير مسلحة ملتزمة بسيادة القانون والشفافية والعدالة والتعددية وتداول السلطة.
Now for this discussion, we welcome Sasha Majda. He's a political commentator, joins us live from Jerusalem. Thank you very much, Sasha, for joining us again. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sasha, now, what is your analysis? Is two-state solution realistic solution to what we see Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and Macron pushing? Do you think this is feasible in near future?
So in the near future, I don't see this possibility as realistic. It's pretty much Israeli consensus that a two-state solution would be an existential threat at the moment for Israel. We have to remind the audience that the Judean Samaria, the West Bank, most of the territory are the hilltops overlooking the Israeli center, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and the airport. So to allow for a Palestinian state to be created at this point without undergoing a severe de-radicalization and drastic reforms is just going to be used as a launchpad for further attacks on Israel. And that's pretty much the general consensus that Israelis feel. We saw in the past year in the Knesset, there was a vote that was passed, and almost 80 out of 120 members of Knesset from all sides, left and right, agreed that at the moment two states is unfeasible. The only question is, what do we do going forward? Some on the left advocate for slow reforms to separate from the Palestinians and eventually lead to a Palestinian state, and those on the right are trying to look for other solutions. But the consensus is that a two-state at the moment is impossible, especially after the horrific October 7th massacre.
And so why do you think these two leaders met and are already talking about, two-state solution, and even Macron has promised funds for this and funds for not this, but aiding Palestine or Gaza?
Yeah, so when we look at Macron's actions in the Middle East, we have to take it into context. We have to understand that Macron is dealing with a very, very weak domestic politics. He's had 5 prime ministers in the past 2 years. He's very unstable. He has a severe problem with radical Islam. There are neighborhoods that his police cannot enter. Jews in France are afraid to show their Jewish. Jews in France are attacked in the streets, and Macron has his own problems in France. But I believe that Macron is under the impression that if he were to appease to the radical Islam in Israel and Palestine, it would make the streets of Paris safer. So I think that all of his actions have been severely irresponsible, especially when he declared a Palestinian state in the middle of the war, and that was celebrated by Hamas. His actions have only fueled the continuation of the war and the suffering in the Gaza Strip until Donald Trump put an end to it and put all the pressure back on Hamas. But we were in a situation where French actions and other European nations, their irresponsible actions and appeasement to radical Islamic terror were in fact continuing the war, because Israel was suffering only for defending themselves, and Hamas was being rewarded, and Hamas knew that if the war were to continue, they would have continued to receive compensation from the French and from the Europeans. But Trump put an end to it. And when we look at Abbas as well, I mean, he's been making promises to the West for decades. He's been making the same promises of reform, but he's continued to pay his pay-for-slay policy, which has been paying terrorists to kill Jews. The more Jews you kill, the more money you make. So Abbas is not really a partner in peace. He's an over 80-year-old man who has been the leader of a corrupt Palestinian Authority who doesn't have respect by his people. And the situation's much more complicated than Abbas and Macron just getting together and deciding to draft a constitution. We see the leading Palestinian polls that came out this month show that the most popular party among Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza continues to be Hamas. If there were to be elections held today, Hamas would become the democratically elected party in Gaza Strip and the West Bank. And over half of Palestinians polled in this leading Palestinian survey continue to support the October 7th massacre and continue to believe that it was justified. So if we're talking about a peace process and the prospect of two states, it's premature to discuss this without discussing a full de-radicalization process and having the Palestinians realize that their future lies solely on their own decision to recognize Israel as a Jewish state living side by side with them instead of looking to destroy them. And French and European funds and aid have continuously played into these organizations like Hamas, who have taken millions, billions of aid money and turned Gaza into a terror city. And we don't want to see that anymore. We want to see Gaza thrive. We want to see the Palestinian people prosper. But that depends on getting rid of this ideology that doesn't see Israel as a partner.
Sasha, please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, staying on this topic, French President Emmanuel Macron has issued a sharp warning to Israel, saying that any move to annex territory in the West Bank would cross a red line. Speaking in Paris after talks with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, Macron has stated that any such actions would draw a strong European response. He condemned what he called the escalation of settler violence and the rapid expansion of settlements, saying both threaten the region's instability and violate international law. The French leader has urged restraint and renewed dialogue, warning that further annexation could destabilize the entire Middle East. Let's listen into what the French president has said.
Nous sommes enfin revenus sur la situation alarmante en Cisjordanie. La violence des colons et l'accélération des projets de colonisation atteignent de nouveaux records qui menacent la stabilité de la Cisjordanie et constituent des violations du droit international. Comme je l'ai dit précédemment, les projets d'annexion partielle ou totale, légale ou de facto, constituent une ligne rouge à laquelle nous réagirons fortement avec nos partenaires européens s'ils étaient mis en œuvre.
Now we welcome back Sasha Machta. He's a political commentator, joins us live from Jerusalem. Thank you very much, Sasha, for staying with us. What could be the potential consequence of West Bank annexations? And if it does happen, do you think that Israelis and Palestinians would be living peacefully side by side under one umbrella?
So first of all, I'd like to say that I don't think that annexation is on the table right now. despite what we may hear in the media, and despite the pressure that Netanyahu is facing from the more far-right elements of his coalition with Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, and even members of his own party, we have to remember that Benjamin Netanyahu is the prime minister, and at the end of the day, he is the one that's taking the large decisions for better or for worse. And I think that there's an understanding that at the moment an annexation would not be a positive move for Israel. There's still a lot of questions to be answered. What would happen to the 2 million Palestinians? What would happen to a radicalized Palestinian society that were to be absorbed to Israel? It would be a security threat as well. And it's also a move that would have to only come through wide consensus among Israeli society, and that's not on the table. As I mentioned previously, there is consensus that a Palestinian state won't be established in the near future, but when it comes to annexation, there is not that same consensus. But I think that now is time for looking for more creative solutions, how we can separate from and not need to reach a situation where Israel is controlling the lives of Palestinians while not renouncing an inch of our security. So I think that now with the Trump administration, there's an opportunity to reach a solution that's not necessarily two states, and to reach a de-radicalization process which will be necessary for any future arrangement. But the consequences would be pretty severe right now for an annexation, both domestically and internationally. So I think that Netanyahu understands this, and that this is premature, and he won't cave into the pressure from some of the more radical elements of his coalition.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Sasha Machta for joining us as a political commentator from Jerusalem. Thank you very much. Now moving on, Hezbollah's